Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner. It is October 27th, and we are going to have a chance today to catch up on the Club National Championships. It was a wild weekend in Ultimate. Not only did we have U.S. Nationals, but we had Colombian Nationals and Japan Nationals. Buzz Bullets, Keith, doesn't make the final and will not win Japan Nationals for the first time in almost 25 years. But we have plenty to talk about stateside, so let's dive right in. Keith, we'll kick it off with this. Molly Brown wins their first ever national championship. They beat Fury in a dominant performance in the final and come away with their first title. It was a complete performance from Molly, although they had to rally in the semifinals just to get into the final. And what a run. I mean, we talked about it all season long. They had the tools, they had the pieces, they had the depth, they had the top end, and they got the job done and slayed the biggest foe in Fury, and honestly made them look bad, Keith.
It was remarkable, and like you said, complete performance and I wouldn't say storybook ending to the long saga. If you heard the interview with Claire Chastain afterwards, she talked about moving out to Denver to join Molly Brown and to try and win a title, and how arduous that journey has been. And it's a culmination of a lot of work to get there. And they did it in a way that I think they felt really proud of and deservingly so, based on what we saw. I don't know if they could have. Look, here's a hot take. I don't know if Molly Brown could have won the championship if they lost the semifinal. Okay, what I mean by that is, if they didn't have that kind of semifinal where they were really tested, I don't know if they would have had the same confident air that they came out with in the final, the same unity that they were playing with. I mean, their top players were playing well, their depth players were playing well. Like, I don't know if they had quite that same edge if they don't have to come from behind against Sixers in semifinals. If they had, gone out and just kind of like walked through it and didn't take that hit. I mean, they had two tests during the tournament, that and their matchup with Brute Squad in pool play, that I think helped them build that tenacity that was necessary to go up against Fury, who was pretty much as advertised, and make them look like a regular team instead of the vaunted Fury. There were some errors on Fury's part, but that's part of the game. Like, we've seen Molly Brown fall victim to those types of errors in years past, and they came out and executed. Very, very strong performance from Molly Brown, and there's no argument about who was the best team in the women's division at this tournament.
No question. And Molly, the final score was 15-13, which makes it sound closer than I really feel like it was. Fury only got 6 break chances, converted 2. Molly had 9, converted 3. But they led from start to finish. I mean, it was basically a wire-to-wire win. I think Molly started on offense, held, and then got an immediate break. I think they got back-to-back breaks, went up 3-1, and Fury called timeout. And basically, Fury never got back in the game. And what was shocking to me, Keith, is that Fury just looked bad. Like, they looked like they were not playing good Ultimate. And, you got to give Molly a lot of credit. They did an amazing job of getting their cutters isolated in space, which we know, if you can get one-on-one isolations, good cutters on offense are going to win 90% of the time. And Valeria Cardenas, who I had ranked number 1 in my top 25 player list after a lot of deliberation about who it should be, and we're going to talk more about our top 25s in the Out the Back subscriber bonus segment, and kind of think about it through the lens of having after what we've seen in Nationals. Valeria Cardenas was just absolutely unstoppable. I mean, really the whole season, but at this tournament, I mean, just devastating to Fury. Anytime things started to break down, she would either get open or she would hit some nasty break throw and almost never make any mistakes. She had no turnovers in the final. She had 440 yards of offense, largely through the air. 61 touches, no turns. Are you kidding me? Like, these are insane numbers, Keith. Just like, oh, I mean, she's the greatest handler thrower on the planet right now. And, if you take her off that team, they do not win. I guarantee that. Like, she has an argument for being the MVP and the best player on the best team.
Certainly the finals MVP. I mean, those numbers are outstanding. To handle that type of workload, to gain that many yards, throw 7 assists, and do so without a turnover is something else. It's one thing to go out there and sling for a bunch of yards and eat turnovers, yards and assists, or to go out there and not turn it over, but do so taking safe options. But Valeria did both. And you could see it shows up on the tape. I mean, if you watch her play in that game, her ability to provide a release to get Molly Brown onto the break side so frequently was a vital part of what made them so hard for Fury to get back in front of. I mean, they just could not wrestle the disc away frequently. And, you look at when I look at Fury stats and their leader in points played is Opie Payne, right? One of the best players in the world. 2 touches out there on defense in obviously it's not the same as in basketball or in football, but you joke about players going out there and running sprints. They're just out there running around, not doing anything. And sure, Opie was doing stuff, but that's how you minimize the impact of a player like Opie is you just don't give up the rock. And very, very nicely done by Molly Brown. And it was clear in the second half when Fury did make a little bit of a run, they were very much like, okay, we have to do something about Valeria. She's killing us. And they tried some poaching looks and whatnot. And I think that slowed down Valeria, but her teammates stepped up around her. That's what I mean by their top end players and their depth players played well. Like Valeria put Fury in a position where they had to overcommit resources to her, and Molly Brown's depth was able to step up in that moment and execute when other teams might have failed.
And Fury tried some stuff. They were poaching off of Lostra a lot, and Lostra got major minutes on the O-line, and they just kept hitting the open player. They punished consistently. And I just feel like Molly had an air of confidence on their offense that we just simply have not seen before. And I think you got to give credit to, certainly Valeria, but also just the continued development of other players on the line, like Lisa P., who was great last season, but I think was, super rock solid this year. Manu, of course, Kristen Reed. And, we didn't even really see all that many O points out of Claire Chastain, and this is the player that was the defining player of their offense for so many years.
6
and
touches.
Certainly
6.
Is that all she had?
That according to our stats, yeah. And, it's because she played 7 D points out of her.
Yeah, she only had 3 O points. And, she's a great piece on their defense. It's really, it's a luxury to be able to take a player of her offensive skill and put her on the defensive line where she is an amazing defender. And it just worked. I think the Cardenas sisters are, just top 5 players on the planet right now. And I think when it's all said and done, I think I look back at this Molly roster and I say, well, were they the most talented this season? Did we overrate Fury relative to Molly? The thing is, we've seen a similar roster construction from Molly in the past, and they haven't gotten it done. And frankly, it looked in that semifinal against Sixers like they might not get it done, Keith. You watch that game. Did it feel like there was a moment where the flip switched and then they took over that game?
Yeah, in the second half, there were 2 instances where Sixers had turns basically right in front of their end zone, and those became 1 throw scores. Those were part of the break run. Molly Brown opened the second half with a break, which kind of put the game on notice. It was 8-5 going into half. Molly Brown had no breaks in the first half, and they opened the second half with a break. And you're like, all right, I guess we got a ball game here. This isn't going to be Sixers rolling through this. But it was those later runs where Molly Brown was able to get these short field opportunities, get reset mistakes out of Sixers that they weren't necessarily making in the first half, and punch those into quick scores that started to make the momentum really shift in that game. Molly Brown also, they in the first half, they're really struggling with the deep game on both sides. They had some trouble defending it. They weren't really activating it in a great way, but got it going a little bit more in the second half. But when you ask the question about the talent disparity, like are we underrating them? It depends, I think, how you grade those depth players. You look at the people who were the biggest contributors for Molly Brown in that final, and bigger contributors than we expected along the run. How do you grade Kristen Reed? Like, do you think that Kristen Reed is as good as the fourth or fifth best player on Fury, Marika Austin or Claire Desmond? I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily would say that she is, but she played like it. And if you can do that at the right time, maybe that's all you need to do. It's that I think is what's challenging about, looking at the individual player rankings and trying to gauge talent. And I think something that we're going to be talking about from this tournament from a lot of divisions, there was a surprise in every division. How much do we get wrong, and how much is it all about timing?
Well, I mean, you look at this, the Cardenas sisters and Claire just delivering pain to Fury all year. Beat him in the WCC final, beat him here in the national finals. I really think if you take a couple players off Molly, they look like old Molly. They lose in semis, and it feels like, another missed opportunity for Denver. But I think that the depth players you're talking about, while you might not draft them onto, a World Games team or even onto, a U.S. women's national team, they have such good sort of complementary skill sets to do particular things well that are unlocked by the elite handler play that we saw from Molly this year. I mean, that to me, that's what it comes down to. Like they had so much confidence about getting off resets and then hitting tough throws. I mean, how many times did Valeria just destroy a mark with an around break? I mean, it was just constant. And like having that ability in the backfield makes offense so easy because you can't cheat. If you poach the lane, fine, we'll hit the break throw. A lot of teams don't have the throwers to do that. And if you don't have the throwers to do that, you end up in high stall situations and you're throwing tricky resets, and eventually a team like Fury is going to eat that up. I mean, I'm curious to know, like, how many break chances did Fury have in semis? I'm going to look it up. We have the data. We have the box scores. If you're a subscriber, you can check out the box scores yourself. And I just feel like a team like Fury, their O-line has never been super clean.
Well,
it wasn't clean all season.
Their semi against Brute Squad was like a bit of a grind fest.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's like going to be a little bit.
They had
untruthful.
6 breaks on 9 possessions. Brute Squad had 6 breaks on 15 possessions. So there was a lot of break chances.
So, 15 break chances for Brute Squad. I mean, I think that was the canary in the coal mine for this final.
Yeah.
Was it not? I mean, it was a grindy defensive type game, but at the end of the day, I mean, only 9 break chances for Fury in that game against Brute isn't really all that many. But, to go 6 for 9, I mean, that's the key. Molly's O-line played great defense. That's the other thing.
We can't leave this game without talking about this moment, because to me, this is the moment of the game. We were sitting in the media tent and Fury is driving the other way for a potential break. And I think it would have made it a 1 point. I'm trying to remember if it would have tied the game or would have actually given them the lead.
It was getting tight late.
Or if it would have made it a 1 point game. I think it would have tied the game if they had scored this break. And I just said out loud, I was like, all right, if Fury scores here, they're going to win this game. I think it was would have tied them up. And it was, if Fury scores here, they're going to win this game. This is where they take control of the game. And instead of them scoring on a pass towards the end zone, Manu Cardenas just flips around like it felt like in midair. Obviously, that wasn't actually what happened, but just incredible reaction time, gets off her feet and gets this poach block in the lane right on the goal line. Okay, it would have made it a 1-point game. That's what this break would have made it a 1-point game. It's a 12-10. Manu gets the block. Molly Brown rushes the other way, gets the score, made it 13-10 like that, and it was over. Like that's Molly Brown winning the game. Like that was to me the swing moment. If Fury converts there, they can turn that game around. But Molly Brown not only got the block, but immediately punched it in the other way, and that's just going to suck the air out of a team.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant block. I mean, Manu she moved towards the player she was marking, kind of leaving the underside lane, but had anticipation that the throw was going to come. And I think it was Nazarov who threw the pass to what appeared to be a now vacated space, just on a simple forehand under. And Manu just plants and goes back across into the lane, layout D. Just a feat of athleticism, yes, but really it's more about the game IQ in that spot, where she knew that if she stayed in that lane, the throw just gets looked off and it hits the swing, which would have been a fine play. That would have been a good defensive play to make, to just take away that cutting space and force them to go to plan B. But instead, she does the thing that great defenders do, which is make it appear as though a space is available, but then actually it's not. And, of course, she has the athleticism to make that play, which many players do not have. But to me, a lot of people were like, oh my God, what an incredible, athletic feat. But to me, I was most impressed by the fact that she had the sense to create this illusion that space was available and then come back into the lane and make, was certainly the clutch block of the game.
I'm a big believer that when people talk about intelligence, they are talking about like one specific type of intelligence, and that there are a couple different types of intelligence that, maybe aren't traditionally valued in the same way, but like physical and spatial intelligence is one of them to me. And this showed how fast and how effectively Manu could make those judgments. I mean, this is a bang, bang moment. There's a player going wide and Manu's like following them and still keeping an eye on the thrower, on the disc. And then in the time that the throw windup starts, already makes a decision that is correct about where to be and how far she can go. It's just a lot of processing happening in a very short amount of time. And I still don't know whether or not, I don't think Denver was in the Poachy red zone set they had been running, which, I've talked a lot about, but I've actually heard a lot of other people talk about this Poachy red zone set they've done that pretty much no one else is doing. Basically, they're running zone in the end zone, like more or less. And I don't quite think they're in that set at this moment, but it feels like it's informed by the ideas there. There's a lot of players moving around, not just following their person around. And I do think that mindset helped inform this play, which I think is appropriate, because I think it was something that they struggled with early in the year, and it's a different type of look that they decided to utilize. And credit to the coaching staff, to Mark Nagel and Andy Loveseth, like a lot of things to go around about how well this team was coached, the development, the planning, the unity that comes
straight
from
schemes, captains.
Yeah, I mean, this was a strong unit, and putting Claire on D-line later in the year, someone who had been such an offensive rock for them. Like, I think they didn't really want to run O&D, but like Claire was out there
but they did in the final,
right?
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's what happened for Fury too, right? They don't run O&D either, but yet Opie's out there for 12 D points or whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, if you look at O points played flattish. Oh, I'm looking at the semis. Hang on. it was flat. It was pretty flat for Fury in semis. And then if you look at it in the finals, things tightened up significantly. And you saw a lot of points for Thompson, Rudin, Desmond, and Nazarov. And if you look at Molly, I mean, it was even more striking than that. I mean, they only had 2 players. They had 7, they had sort of 7 O-liners. And then they had 2 players that got O points. That's it. Claire Chastain played 3 O points, and Robert Fassett Carmen played 1. And otherwise, it was Megan Cousins, Valeria, Rena Kawabata, Kristen Reed, Lostra, Cardenas, Manu, and then Lisa P. And it's kind of crazy to go all year without having kind of like a consistent O-line, but then to be like, you know what, this is our O-line. I can't argue with it. You wonder like I kind of want to ask questions now, like, did you know that this was going to be your O-line? Like, did you run this line at practice, but then like not show it during the season? Because you didn't want to like let people scout it too much, or because you were winning games easily a lot of the time and you didn't need to gas out your top players.
The purple line. That's what this was. When we should make shirts. We need like to celebrate a Molly Brown champion, like put Unsinkable on it and then like underline it with a purple line.
Love that. So Keith, let's do this for all of the finals. Top 3 players in the game, either team. We go 3, 2, 1. Who do you go with at number 3?
Oh man, I got to think. Because I mean, number 1 is obvious, so it's really just about figuring out.
Number 1's obvious. I can go first.
Yes,
while you
go
think.
for it.
Number 3 for me is Anna Thompson. I thought she was the best player for Fury. Mostly playing on the offensive line. Had a really clutch block, 3 assists, 148 yards of offense. Didn't have a turnover. Second on the team in edge behind Mad Dog. And I just thought, continues to look like kind of the future of Fury to me. And, the defensive ability on a turnover is such a key part of what makes them successful, because, she can go out there and play a lot of O points, and she tends to get it back if they have turnovers. I mean, that's one of the things that made Fury so tough, for their entire existence. But, one of the reasons they were such a great team this year is that even though their O-line was not super consistent and had some, higher number of turnovers relative to some of the other offenses in the division, they're just so good at getting it back. And, they did a pretty good job of that in the final. It just, they didn't have answers defensively for Molly.
Yeah, okay. I think I've settled on my top 2, and it's they're both for Molly Brown. So this is my difficult one, because there's like
Same
4
here.
players from Fury that I think had the most standout performances. I think I'm gonna go with Nazarov. Mad Dog, just like being the rock. She didn't have a ton of assists, but she handled the most touches. Looked poised. Came up with that big goal at the end when they were trying to make the comeback through the contact. Like, Mad Dog making big plays while also being that kind of like steady and calm force that she's so great at. I mean, it's an aura from Mad Dog. I'm gonna go with Anna Nazarov. I joked with somebody that like I feel like she's so calm on the field that like she could be in the middle of a national championship game and I could be on the sideline and we could be having a conversation like midpoint. Like she has the disc in her hands. Like she has that wherewithal and very still love to see that from her. I'll go with number 2. I really thought about Kristen Reed at this point. Came up with some huge catches and we got some great quotes from her. Jenna Weiner in the recap had some great quotes from Kristen Reed about like how she doesn't even know who she's going up against half the time. Like she's Sky and Hall of Famers, and like they're like, this is your matchup, and she's like, who's that? Like I've never heard of this person. But I think I'm going to take Manu because of the block. Like, I think Kristen Reed otherwise had probably had a better game, but like Manu coming up with the play of the game in many ways, like it is so vital. So I'll take Manu as my 2.
Yeah, to me, I don't really think it's too much of a question. I think it's definitely Manu. Just giving them a ton of options on offense while playing great defense after the turn. Had a pair of blocks, both for the O-line. Did have 2 turnovers, but she's going to be that kind of player. I think that's why it makes it even more impressive that Valeria had 0 turnovers, and who's obviously the number 1 player in the game, and really had one of the best games of any player at the tournament in a big spot. Just unbelievable performance this whole season. Frankly, is there any question? Like, my vote for Player of the Year, which I don't, maybe I'll vote, maybe I won't, is definitely Valeria. She was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll publicly say that I'm going to have Valeria at the top of my Player of the Year ballot. Give her everything. If we had a Finals MVP, I'd give her the Finals MVP. If we had a Nationals MVP, I'd give her that too. For Player of the Year, yeah, Valeria's going to win it, like, for my mind.
All right, so there you go. There's our top 3 players from the women's final. So obviously more to come about the women's division. Ultimately, we kind of saw the top 8 teams at the end of the day after all of the consolation games were played out. They're still the top 8 teams, but maybe some interesting ordering. So we'll talk more about that next week on Deep Look. Right now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Bravo Country, let's ride.
Time to talk about Sunset Lake CBD. Now, Sunset Lake CBD is a hemp farm located just outside of Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake produced milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and in 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD. Sunset Lake CBD believes that their farm-table approach is the best way for you to get responsibly produced, high-quality CBD products that actually work, like their CBD gummies, topicals, oils, and more, and those help with stress, aches, and for me, sleep. I had to fly back on the red eye from Nationals. I used to be able to stay an extra day, but now that I got a kid and stuff, it's like I got to get home ASAP. So fly out on the red eye, and that means getting some pretty low quality sleep on the plane. And then I flew to New York City, so I had to take the trains. So I get into New York in the AM, and I have to take the train home. So I got a couple hours on the train where I'm all sorts of groggy, but it was helpful to have my Sunset Lake CBD melatonin help me get a nice restful experience once I was on the train. So able to relax a little bit and smoothly transition into my day without that weird groggy feeling you get when you take something else that might help you go to sleep, but certainly doesn't help you wake up feeling refreshed in the same way. So I definitely appreciate being able to do that when I have to travel, which can be challenging with the red eye lifestyle, but glad to be home anyway. But I definitely recommend it, and you can actually get access to the same types of products. You got to check them out at sunsetlakecbd.com. You can use our coupon code DEEPLOOK, that's one word, DEEPLOOK, and you'll get 20% off of all products. That's Sunset Lake CBD, farmer-owned, Vermont-grown.
Welcome back to Deep Look. Johnny Bravo kind of comes out of nowhere and wins the 2022 National Championship. It's their first since they won in 2014. That was the Jimmy Mickle, Kurt Gibson super team that, felt inevitable. And certainly this Johnny Bravo team did not feel inevitable, but they went out in the final and through a combination of just an elite offensive performance from the O-line, probably the best the O-line played literally the entire season, and enough defensive wrinkles to cause Truck Stop to play its worst game of the season, won pretty convincingly in the final, and Truck just really never got a foothold in the game, never got a break. Keith, this is unbelievable. This Bravo run, they went 1-2 in pool play. They lost to GOAT to start the tournament. And they just caught fire at the right time and somehow come back from 3 points down late to Sockeye. They're on 11-8 in pre-quarters. And they come back, they win that game on Universe, and then fight their way through the bracket. I would say a softer side of the bracket than what Truck had to go through, and get to the final and then just kind of steamroll Truck in the final. Unbelievable.
It was pretty shocking. I did identify this Bravo team as having a good matchup with Truck. It didn't help them in their pool play game, I guess, but those chickens eventually came home to roost in some way. But at this point, I was pretty sold on Truck after what we watched them do to Pony. But man, a fantastic defensive performance from Bravo. Being able to go out and slow down this Truck offense that had looked just so well oiled throughout the tournament, looked fairly resilient, but Bravo was there to gum up the works. Cody Spicer matching up with Rowan McDonald, who was just scorching in the semifinal, I think really disrupted Truck's game. And they'd been so good during the year, like pivoting to plan B, plan C. Like there's always an alternate route for them. But there just wasn't against Bravo. They just couldn't get to those other looks. And, Bravo was there to make them pay with a very efficient offensive game, which I think was Bravo's ceiling, was the ability to go out and deliver on that level. And they really brought it at the right time.
Yeah, you look at Rowan's semifinal against Pony, they had no answer. Rowan over 300 yards of offense and did it on 27 touches. He had the same number of touches in the final, Keith, and had basically half the yardage. And he had a turnover. And I mean, this was an interesting game because Truck Stop definitely looked a little less comfortable, but we've seen them play against elite defenses all season and have times where they looked uncomfortable and yet they still scored with a high degree of efficiency. But here, we're watching guys point blank drop it. The Andrew Roy drop on the sideline after they'd already given up a couple breaks was just brutal. And Bravo's D-line was ruthless with putting the disc into the end zone. And I mean, the game just got away from them early. You look at guys who normally are just not turning it over, and they were turning it over in the final. Boxley had 2 turns. Johnny Malks had a turn, mentioned Rowan's turn. Andrew Roy had the drop. And, when Truck's D-line had chances, which were few and far between, they made mistakes. David Bloodgood took that horrendous deep shot into coverage, when they had a chance to get a break back in the first half. It's a tough pill to swallow if you're Truck, because you have this incredible storybook season where you're undoubtedly the best team in the regular season. You look amazing during the whole tournament. You go out and you dispatch Ring and Pony, the 2 teams that both of us, Keith, had in the finals. And you come up against a Bravo team that you'd already beaten multiple times in the season, including earlier at Nationals, in an insane, high-efficiency, 6 total turnover game. And you win that game by 4 points. And then you come out and you play like that. I mean, I do give credit to Bravo's defense and, frankly, the young players on their O-line who stopped making mistakes, and we'll talk about this Bravo offense. But Truck just picked a really, really bad time to have their worst game of the year. And it was their worst game of the year. No breaks and bad offense. And I mean, what are you going to do? You lose to anybody in that kind of situation if you play like that.
It's 6 drops for Truck in the final. They had 1 in the semifinal.
Drops?
We have 6 recorded drops.
Oh my God.
And that's a lot of free money to give away. And yeah, Bravo deserves a ton of credit for the way their offense performed, for the defensive challenge they put in front of an offense that otherwise had been unstoppable. But there's something of it feels a little bit like Truck lost this game as much as Bravo won it. They just put themselves way behind, and Bravo, all the credit for just walking out there and just making them pay for it with a very efficient offensive performance. Quinn Finer looked really strong. Cole Wallen, I don't know. To me, Cole Wallen's the 7th guy on their O-line or whatnot. Just really strong performance in that game. Alex Atkins obviously doing the big play stuff and the goofy celebrations.
Alex Atkins he's a big time problem out there.
Yeah,
when he's on, people don't have an answer.
That's what's interesting about these 2 teams to me. is like
his line. He had 2 goals, 4 assists, and a block. No turns. Nasty.
Yeah, you need turns from Alex Atkins. If you're the other team, you need some of the shot taking to come with turns, and you can't leave him with a 0 in that number. That's gonna be a tough place to be. But both these teams are built around like young, stable cores, right? Like, I think Truck, I'm sure, is disappointed. You don't know how many chances you're gonna get, but I'm sure they also are like, okay, we could be really good for a long time with this play.
They can.
And
they can.
Bravo's got to feel the same way. I mean, Bravo's got to be like, wow, we played so well. We showed what we can do. We get to walk away with the title. And like, what's to stop us from being number 1 next year? You know what I mean?
Tell me right now, which teams in the men's division have more promising young talent than those 2 teams? Pony's old. Let's be honest. Pony's, I mean, yes,
Pony's has a bunch of 30 plus year old guys.
But their best guys are all late 20s, early 30s. Like dudes who are going to hang it up in a couple of years.
The only team really, Ring maybe. Depends on what you define as young, but like I can't get myself more excited about LSB, Anders, AD core than I can about Danny Landesman and Cody Spicer and Alex Atkins. Like.
And let's talk about Calvin Stoughton. He had a play at the end of the first half to take them to half, up 8-5. He just skies the pants off of Rowan, dishes, upline, skies him again. And I mean, wow. That was a crazy sequence to close out the half. And like, Rowan had like, and maybe he still does, has like a Pody case. He was that good this year. He was an absolute rock for this Truck team. I mean, getting open in tiny spaces, hitting huge hucks. I mean, he had just a brilliant game against Pony in semis. And then, to just get, destroyed by a kid who's still in college on that play, we've known that this like influx of Lotus guys from the Mama Bird program back into Bravo after, playing as this separate team last year that took the second bid out of the South Central last year and played pretty well at nationals. Like, it's easy to forget about that, but they merged these teams together and all of a sudden you're looking at this, talent wise, clearly top 5 team. And they were just inconsistent. Like if you go back to semis, the defense bailed them out, right? That against Rhino, Bravo's D-line bailed them out. They gave a lot of problems to the Rhino offense. Didn't really let Rafi Hayes get going. Marks had a couple of nice plays, but otherwise was kind of bottled up. And they just kind of disconnected the handlers from the cutters. And there was a lot of turnovers, but the Bravo offense also had a lot of turnovers. Both teams had 10 turns in the first half. And, we were seeing some like kind of bad decision making from some of the young guys. Landesman had some bad turns. Just not super sharp, but, they did enough to beat Rhino. But it really looked like there's no way that team is going to beat Truck. But the stylistic matchup was always good for Bravo. I mean, I said it before the tournament. Like, Bravo's got a chance to do damage against Truck. We've seen them win. They're the only team that's beaten Truck in all of this span since US Open. And I think we saw it come out in the final. And it just, it required Bravo to be hot, and they were, and Truck to be a little off, and they were. And that's, it played out just like that. And Truck's D-line, which was never spectacular, kind of we saw what could happen, which is that they just can't get turnovers. They can't get breaks.
And that was my worry about Truck. I talked about it for our subscribers who were able to join us or have had a chance to listen to some of the live recordings we did during nationals. I mean, this was my concern about Truck, was that the D-line couldn't pick up if the O-line were to ever fumble the ball, which started to seem like it was impossible. Like this O-line could fumble the ball and somehow recover it and like then throw a crazy lateral and still score a touchdown. Like that's what it started to feel like, but they just weren't able to. And you know, they had a real tough challenge, I guess, in the way that they match up with Bravo. But I mean, the question is on the table, Charlie. I mean, is this, how for real is this? How much of this is like Bravo is the best team in all the land, and how much of this is matchups and hot streak at the right time? What do you think?
It's hard for me to assess that because you look at the inconsistency of Bravo's results, and I mean, even at this tournament, and it does feel like they just caught fire at the right time. And let's not forget, they had a path that enabled them, I think, to get to the point where they had the chance to beat Truck. I think if you put Bravo on the other side of the bracket and they have to go through Ring and Pony the way that Truck did, they don't make the final. I don't think they make the final. I don't think they beat Pony. I mean, that Pony Truck game, we talked about it before the game. Oh, this is the de facto final. The winner of this game is going to win the championship. And I think you saw an incredible performance from both of those teams, who, by the way, had to play through after Grant Lindsley had to be taken off the field in an ambulance following the worst collision and injury situation that I've ever seen on an ultimate field. And thank goodness Grant is doing fine. He's out of the hospital. Last I heard, he's still out in California because they don't want him flying yet. They think it's just a bad concussion. But I mean, he was out for 2 or 3 minutes. And, you know, you wonder, Keith, if they don't lose Grant, if Pony doesn't lose Grant, do they win that game against Truck? And we should note that Babbitt was not playing at this point either.
I think they probably still lose that game against Truck, but you know, also not accounting for what mental state it had the teams in. But yeah, I think they probably still lose that game against Truck. I don't know if Grant's a great player, but I don't know if he's worth 2 goals. It's a lot. But
you think about the situations where their D-line had the disc and turned it over in the red zone. There was like 3 or 4 of those.
Yeah, but like some of those came with like O-line guys out there. Like it wasn't like they had like you know, D-line role players who didn't know what to do with the rock in their hands. It was like Sam Little throwing to Ben Yacht, you know?
I hear you, but I mean Grant was a World Games player this year, Keith.
Sure. I mean Grant's an extremely talented player. He's great after the turn. I also think his savvy and intelligence on defense maybe matches up a little bit better with Truck than some of the defenders that they had to put out there that are really explosive and athletic, but like that kind of gets neutralized a bit against Truck. So I think he had value, but I mean, Truck looked really damn good.
Yeah. You know, I think, I mean, it's not like Bravo had a cheap path. They beat Machine. Well, they beat Sockeye on a comeback in pre-quarters. Then they had to beat Machine, who they just destroyed. And then they had to beat Rhino. But I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, it's just different than if you have to play Ring and then Pony. It's just different. They lost to Pony at Pro Champs. And I don't think they ever played Ring the whole season. You know, and who knows? The way that they played, maybe they make through. But to get back to your question, you know, what does this mean for us moving forward? I mean, there's no reason that they can't be a consistent semifinalist. They have some of the most promising young talents in the country on their team. And I think that, you know, their defense was one of the best in the country. Shout out to Tim Kavalis for orchestrating the defense. And, you know, we talked a bunch about Cody Spicer at this point and how amazing he's been playing. I mean, he could be Depody, right? Like,
sure could.
You know, he was just excellent all year. And I don't know, though. I'm not going to bet on Bravo to win again next year. We've had, you know, however many years in a row, no repeat champions. And we've now had 6 different champions in the 6 past tournaments.
Yeah, to me, what this all says is it just lends further credence to the idea that, particularly in the men's division, it's not enough to be really good anymore. You have to like But I think it used to be, and it still may be at some levels, like even the college level, it can be enough to just be the most talented team. You don't actually always have to play your best. You don't have to maximize every moment because there's a disparity and a lack of consistency. And at least in the club men's division, it doesn't feel like that's really enough anymore. The best team can lose to a team that maybe has less talent if they have a bad matchup, or they don't play well at that moment, or they get a little unlucky. And this is, I think, the nature, what you hear about pro sports. To win a title, it takes more than just being good. You have to be a little lucky, and things have to break your way a little bit. So it's all about like putting yourself in a position to win when things go your way over and over again. So the more times, obviously, that you're in that spot, the better your chances of getting the title are. And I think that at least club men's ultimate, it feels like it's getting to that point where you not only have to be good enough to win when you get your chance. And Bravo was good enough. They cleared, as the kids say. Bravo clears. And they get to go home with rings because of it. I mean, it really is remarkable. They're the 8th seed. I just like, I didn't see it. I had a lot of hype for this Bravo team that maybe died down a bit with them losing at regionals, but I was pretty high on them in general. And there was no way that I saw them coming out and winning a freaking title. Like it's bonkers. It's bonkers.
I don't think if they were being honest, I don't think any of the players on the team thought it either.
Let me see.
They lost to GOAT.
They did at the same tournament, the same like 3-4 day period. They lost to GOAT, who I'm sure is, reveling in transitive property over here. Let's see. How many people do you think picked Denver Johnny Bravo to win out of 343 Beat Charlie Challenge entries?
You got to be.
It's more than one.
I'll say 4.
That is pretty close. 6 out of 343 entries picked Bravo as champion. For reference,
credit to them.
116 picked Pony and 121 picked Truck. So
yeah, so like more than 2/3 are on Truck and Pony.
Yes, and like Bravo is the top out of the teams below Sockeye. Like the top 5 got the majority, and then Bravo's like one of the only 2 teams besides that got more than one pick for champion. So,
all right, question: did Truck choke?
Yes, I mean I think we kind of addressed that. Like, yeah, I mean they went out there and dropped the rock 6 times. Defense didn't bring it. Like, yeah, they were not ready to respond to the moment, which is obviously a really hard thing to do.
I'm going to humbly request that you or somebody, you can email us if you want. deeplook@ultiworld.com. Watch the Truck Bravo game from pool play and watch the final and explain what was different. I haven't seen the pool play game. I haven't seen it. And I mean, it maybe the story is simple. Maybe the looks were the same. Maybe everything was playing out the same and Truck just dropped it. But I doubt it's that. I think that there were some adjustments defensively that were made to give some more problems to the Truck offense. So I want to know what was different besides the pressure of the moment. But man, Truck. Like, this team, as you already said, has definitely a future of success in front of them. But the title windows can be pretty small in this sport. And they had this great opportunity where everything was clicking. It's not a given that the offense is going to click like this next year. For one thing, everyone is going to look at the tape all year to try to figure out how to stop what they were doing this season. And did they miss their chance? We won't know for a couple years. I mean, they could still come back next season and get the job done, but pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean, there's a young core for Truck, but there are also some veteran players who are in key roles. I mean, you look at Rowan and Dave Cranston, like they're not going to be this good forever.
Yeah, I feel good. Like Malks, the Norbombs, a lot of young talent on their D line. Alexandre Fall and
Fred
Fra,
Farr.
and like I feel like Jacques Nissen, who like could still step into an even bigger role. They have a lot of really, really good, particularly handler talent that is under the age of 25. So there's no reason that they can't continue to be successful. But again, I mean, it's so hard to get to those games at this point. Like both of our finals picks, Keith, did not make it to the game,
which is clearly an indictment of.
And we'll talk more next week about like Ring. What happened to them? O-line just disastrous. All right, it's time to do our picks for top 3 players of the game. And Keith, the question is, are you going to go all Bravo or does somebody from Truck get a spot here? But who you got number 3?
Yeah. I think I might. If there's one Truck player I can squeeze in, it's Tyler Monroe. I'm going to go with Tyler Monroe. He ends up tallying 6 assists in the losing effort. Sad words to say, I'm sure, for Truck fans, but he was the guy I think who they had to turn to with Rowan being held quiet, and he was the one offensive player who I think was like really getting success. I mean, he was basically like near the team lead in touches. Again, turned that into 6 assists, no turnovers, and a healthy amount of yardage. So I'll take Tymon as my number 3.
I respect it, but I'm going to go triple Bravo here.
Understandable.
My number 3 is Cody Spicer, who was just causing all kinds of problems defensively for Rowan and Truck. And, in some ways, I feel like this is almost like a season recognition as well. But, he also put 2 assists on the board, got a block, was just, an incredible piece for them in this game that I think, if they don't have him, it could be a very different result. So he's my number 3. And I'll go straight to my number 2. My number 2 is Quinn Finer, 4 goals, 0 turns, driving the offense, not making mistakes. And, he was one of those guys that stepped up in a big way for this final to keep this O-line break free.
All right. I'm going to take Cody Spicer too. Being able to really be the leader on defense for this team. Very, very impressive performance in a one-on-one matchup that it seemed like basically there was nobody else who could do it. Nobody else had that in them. He was the stopper that they needed. And I got to give him a ton of credit for that. Like obviously the stats are not like remarkable, but their results were.
Who you got at number 1, Keith?
Number 1, I'm going to take Alex Atkins.
Yep.
I mean, we went over the numbers when we were talking about the segment. 2 goals, 3 assists, no turnovers.
It was 4 assists.
4 assists, a block.
And a block.
I mean, it's great yardage numbers. Like very strong performance from Atkins, a fiery player who I think also like added a lot to the emotional strength of that team, like them getting fired up. Atkins is a big part of that. So I'm going to go Alex Atkins.
I'm also taking Atkins. I think he's like their most gifted talent, and he played up to his potential in this game. And remember, they didn't have him for most of the season. He basically just played nationals because he hurt his PCL earlier in the season. So he comes back for nationals and shows you why he has an incredibly high ceiling. And, big trash talker. Not sure that everybody loves him out on the field, but he put up the numbers to drive this offense to new highs and, at the perfect possible time. So Atkins gets my vote as well, Keith.
No surprise, Tev. We've had unanimous number 1s. I think they've both been very clear.
So more to come, but congratulations to Johnny Bravo. Another new champ and
Denver double, baby.
Denver double, Keith. Wild. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Mixtape wins their 2nd national championship. They hit the double peak, and the only team to hit the double peak this year after WCC. So we'll talk about their win coming up. We're back on Deep Look. Seattle Mixtape wins their second national championship. They looked like the best team. I don't want to say they looked like the best team all season because they didn't play very well at the beginning of the season when they were not at full strength. But of course, they won WUCC. They were the odds-on favorite coming into the tournament, and they end up winning the tournament. Maybe not quite as comfortably as you might have expected. They had a real test against Exist in semis, and then they almost gave up a monster run to Noise to end up forcing Universe, but they ended up winning by 2 after Noise made a 5-0 run to get back into the game. And yes, Madison Noise was in the final with Seattle Mixtape. But at the end of the day, Keith, the combination of Kelly Johnson and Khalif El-Salam was just too much for other teams to deal with. And, good depth as always, but those two were playing at a very high level and were able to just, do what they needed to do to win another title for this Seattle Mixtape team.
They've certainly felt like the best team throughout nationals. As we watched other top seeds fail, Mixtape was just thumping teams, good teams. The final, I had them covering 3.5. I was surprised that Noise was able to keep it this close at the end.
I don't think that was necessarily even the wrong bet, Keith. But
it looked like they were on the way to it. I mean, they had a real shot at getting there, and that late run from Noise kind of turned things around and certainly injected some much needed energy after the first half of this game was very grindy. It was late in the day. It's the last game of the tournament, so the fans had kind of dried up a little bit. It was a tough one to start because the game was slow. There was just did not get out of the gates quickly. But once Mixtape picked it up, once they got through that first kind of slog, then it started to feel like they were going to run away with it. And then at the last moment, Noise just kind of grabs on, has their final swings, but Mixtape just too strong.
I mean, it was an ugly game. Let's just be honest. It was 40 turnovers. It was not great. But ultimately, Kelly Johnson has 430 yards of offense. Khalif has 300 yards of offense. And, some strong performances from players like Mark Munoz. I thought Cam Bailey played really well all weekend. And they have great depth to complement the players up at the top of the roster. And so, Noise was just outmatched from a talent perspective. But you got to give credit to Noise. Not only did they get to this game with some amazing wins along the way, pulling out universe point wins with Robin Fennig Hux twice in a row in the bracket to get to the final. But it looked like they were going to force Universe. And then, it felt like it was going to be a storybook ending for them. I don't think a lot of people had this Noise team going this far. Certainly I didn't. They made a jingle out of what I said on Deep Look about them being a tier 2 or 3 team. And hey, you know what? Robin Fennig is an absolute monster, a monster on the field. Could win Pody. Wouldn't be crazy. She is that good. And she and Dylan DeClerc just freaking carried this team. It was awesome. But they had better depth than I expected as well. Just another team that got hot at the right time, it feels like, in the bracket and was able to make this run.
Yeah, it's funny to when it happens twice in a row, right? When you play really well in the clutch in the bracket twice in a row, I don't, it's hard to know what to make of it. But yeah, I was impressed with Emily Cohen, with Sydney French, Kelson Alexander. So yeah, their players down the roster definitely stepped it up. But yeah, it was a lot of Robin and Dylan DeClerc. Robin, it's look, I know there's turnovers, but you gotta recognize when the positives outweigh the negatives here. If that's the necessary price to pay to get the impact that Robin delivers to a game, like, sign me up. It's a good deal. All right. You got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, and Robin makes a damn good omelet.
26 assists, number 2 in the division, behind Austin Taylor, who had 27 for Dirty Bird. And she had 20 turnovers.
Yeah.
This is recorded stats on USAU, so take it with a grain of salt. But, a lot of turns, but also a lot of dimes, including some ultra clutch deep shots late in games.
Yeah, not just dimes, but like a lot of just like really difficult throws that other players just are like, I'm good, I'll pass. Like, knowing that Robin can hit them changes the field a lot, and was certainly important for Noise's success along the way. And yeah, I think that they probably want a couple things back in the final. Like you said, it was an ugly game, and I think that's part of what kept it close. Is I think Noise was a little more comfortable playing that ugly game than maybe Mixtape was. But yeah, they like every team did this weekend. I sit here and wonder, watching Mixtape, like, did Kelly Johnson just walk in here and take the pody away from Khalif? Like, I don't know. Mixtape didn't exactly have a great regular season, so like, how much do you weigh that? But was Kelly Johnson the most important player on this team? Was she the best player on this team? I really don't know. The mixed pody conversation is going to be very intriguing, because of the way Mixtape's regular season went, and because they had a couple players who made such a big impact. Alex Nelson also get a shout out. Basically, like, even though Zach Saban's on the team and was still doing stuff, like, did the Zach Saban thing from last year. It's just like, hey, I'm big and I jump high, and you better get the hell out of my way unless you want to get up on a poster. So shout out to Alex Nelson for coming up with some big plays. But yeah, I mean, Mixtape's good, and they have a lot to work with.
Sorry, Keith. Kelly Johnson was so good that the other teams had to put dudes on her, and it still didn't really stop her.
Yeah, but that is a strategy that we noted on stream is like straight out of Summer League playbook. You don't see that at the elite club level.
No, you really don't.
You don't see teams being like, okay, we got to figure out a new move to stop this handler, because what we're doing is not working, and we're willing to shift the matchups in a way people don't expect and don't anticipate.
Johnson also said that put on one of her tweets #retired, and so maybe she goes out on top with a ring. Is this her first championship? I think so. Never got one with Riot.
Won a world championship with Riot, I'm pretty sure.
True. I'm talking about USA.
Yeah, but I know you're referring to USAU. It's just wild to have multiple world championships, but you can't get a natty. Can't get a sectionals championship. So
let's just be honest. Worlds doesn't mean as much. That's a fact.
I expect a full subscriber bonus segment from your
email me. You want to tell me why I'm wrong? Email me. You think the U.S. club teams take WCC as seriously as Club Nats? Come on. Half those teams think it's a preseason warm-up tournament. That's just a fact.
Man. Yeah, I'm not arguing against you. I'm just laughing at the potential responses.
Deep look at oldtworld.com.
Or Deep Look Pod on Twitter.
At Deep Look Pod on Twitter. Yeah. By the way, Markham Schaffner also posted a picture of cleats at the field. A classic, I'm hanging them up, social media post.
Yeah, but don't leave out that after that he replied, "Why is everybody texting me? It's just a nice picture of some cleats."
Well, okay. I mean, it's a good joke.
But which one's the joke?
Fair.
We don't know.
Fair question. Yeah, this I don't know that this Mixtape team has a ton of fans outside of Seattle. Like, other teams really don't like this Mixtape team. And, there were some calls this weekend that people have been talking about. I'm just going to say right now, we're not going to sit here and talk about the calls, okay? All people want to talk about is the calls. Oh, this was a travel. Oh, this was a whole bad call. Oh, this person's a horrible person. Stop. Can we talk about the Frisbee, please? It's so much more fun to talk about the Frisbee than to bitch about the calls. And I just feel like it's worse than ever, where it's like everyone's a cop trying to figure out like who made the bad play, or made the bad bid or this and that. And look, I'm the first person to sit here and tell you that the Observer should be more aggressive with cards to stop these bad bids from happening. But like, come on, man. Like, this is a fun sport to play and talk about. Let's do that part. But you know what? Mixtape, the way that they, have all of this ultra high energy sideline stuff, I think it just, they can be a little grating. They can be a little annoying, but they're super good. And it's kind of surprising to me that this is only their second title, given how strong of a team that they've had. I mean, you link back to last year when they lost to BFG in semis, and it's like BFG just had this inspired run of play. But I feel like that team regressed to the mean a little bit. And Mixtape, I think, upgraded a little bit, and that helped them this year. But they just felt inevitable the whole season.
Yeah, I mean, after you get past Vegas and Khalif, they had a really balanced lineup. Got contributions from all sorts of players: Francis Gellert, Lexi Garrity, Mark Munoz, who you mentioned, Amy Kawhi, Zach Saban. Like, it's a really long list, and they really well distributed. And I think that was one of the things that they were really able to push teams with, is that they didn't have to put so much workload on Khalif and Vegas along the way. They could hold them to really, really punch through them when it came down to the late games. I mean, they beat this Noise team 15-10 in pool play, and then absolutely punked Hybrid on the live stream in the 4-5 showcase game. It's kind of crazy that 15-7 against Hybrid was the only time that they played like another team that prior to the tournament was considered a championship contender. The toughest games were Noise and Exist in semis and finals, right? The 8 and the 9 seed. It's a weird path. Mixed getting extra crazy this year. Like, a hold my beer kind of. You thought you knew how crazy Mixed was. Wait till you see what we've got in store for you this year.
Do we deserve scorn for picking like chalky picks in Mixed?
I told you that picking chalk and Mixed is the spicy take. Like, it is the hot take. Is that what the seeding says is what's actually going to happen? Someone please like explain to me what the hell just happened. Like, how does BFG lose 14-6 to Space Force and win the pool?
Insane.
How do we have multiple teams in that situation across this tournament? Dragon Thirst goes 1-2 in pool play. Like I said, they were going to lose a game. I didn't think they'd lose 2, and then like still look really good. They really could have gotten through Noise. I don't know what pathways could have opened up had they done that. This tournament was wild.
It was wild.
Absolutely bonkers.
Noise makes this run for the final from the pre-quarters. I mean, the same thing as Bravo. You don't see that too often. But, Noise dispatches Dirty Bird, beats BFG on Universe, beats Dragon Thrust on Universe. They've basically, I think they only had one win ever against Dragon Thrust before the semis win.
That's right.
Ever. And Dragon destroyed them at regionals. Destroyed them. Sometimes you get hot. And when you get hot at the right time, you can make a run.
Man, it started to like rain. It was a gross semifinal. The conditions were not favorable, and Noise was just reveling in it. They loved it.
Awesome performance from the team yet again. And will I fade them again next year?
Absolutely.
I might. All right. Well, there you go. Mixtape comes away victors. We'll talk more about Exist. Very impressive team this season. And the rest of the bracket. And
I was just going to say, how are you going to let this whole segment go by without talking about Exist? You individually.
Oh, I mean, I feel like we can do 10 minutes on Exist, but I think I want to do it next week. Yeah, I mean, they put up quite the game. I think that although the scores ended up being similar, 2-point win for Mixtape in both semis and finals, I think Exist played the better game and was like more in the contest than Noise.
Agreed.
Noise had to come back late with a crazy run just to even make it respectable. And I mean, frankly, had a chance,
if you will,
had a chance to force Universe, which would have been something. But Exist was like right there the whole game, and yeah, their women matching players were super impressive. And I thought the Dross played great, but we'll talk about them next time. But, you know, I wonder about this Exist team. Like, can they pick off a couple of like Pony and Bent players and like upgrade again? Because if they can, I think they have a chance to be a team that could win the mixed championship.
Oh, just a couple of moving pieces here and there could be a big difference. But obviously, just an extra year of reps also turned out to be a pretty big difference for them too.
Yep. Now it's time to pick our top 3 players from this Mixtape Noise final. Keith, number 3, who you got?
Number 3, I'm trying to decide between 2 players, and they're not on the same team. So this is a tricky one because it's like, what do I want to do with Robin Fennig? Do you know who your 3 is? Let me think, and you pick.
Okay, sure. My number 3 is going to be Dylan DeClercq. While I think Robin had the better tournament, I don't think she had the better game. DeClercq, 3 goals, 2 assists. He did have 2 turnovers, but in a turnover fest game like this, that's actually not all that bad. And was just, you know, really difficult for Mixtape to deal with defensively. So DeClercq, I thought, was their best player in this game. And, you know, as impressive as Robin Fennig was, she only had 1 assist and had 4 turnovers in the final. So not her best showing.
Oh, maybe you're putting together a convincing argument. I still think I'm going to stick with Robin for the reasons I kind of outlined earlier. Like, there's just so much value. Like, 4 turnovers in a game of this volume of turnovers, like, feels a little like it's less important. You know, it's kind of edge theory behind that. And yeah, didn't stack up a ton of like goals and assists, but the touches are so valuable for this team to be able to get the disc back into her hands reliably. And, you know, obviously turn that into plenty of yardage as well. So when you like compare the touch to turnover ratio, that also makes it a little easier to swallow. So I'm going to take Robin as my number 3. I'm continuing my pattern here of losing team at 3 and then winning team at 1 and 2.
Who do you got at 2?
At 2, look, I'd love for there to be another way to spin it, but I'm going to take Khalif. Like, guy's just really damn good. And he puts so much pressure on the other team to answer him. Like, if you're not going to be able to do something about him, he can take over the game so quickly. And they actually did a better job, I'd say, against him than most teams have. You know, he's held to 2 assists. He has 2 turnovers. But he does end up with 300 yards on a team, second on the team, 23 touches, over 15 points. Just a still workhorse effort from Khalif.
I'm kind of going back and forth here. I'm going to look at the stats to see if it backs up my intuition, because I have a sense about who I think should get the nod here. But is that what I'm actually going to see when I look at the numbers? I mean, it wouldn't be crazy for me to pick this player, but ultimately, Khalif played the most points in the game. He had 15 points played. The other player I was considering was Cam Bailey, who I thought just had a really nice game offensively for Mixtape and hit some huge throws, some really key moments. Didn't have, you know, I think he only had 1 turnover, but he only played 11 points. I got to go with Khalif as well. You know, he's out there pretty much every single O point and crossing over. You know, he's obvious option to cross over. And he didn't have like a mind-boggling amount of, you know, scores or assists. He had 2 assists and 0 goals, but that understates how much work he did. And I think that's why the yardage numbers really help you tell the story. You know, he had the second most yards on the team behind the player that I'm putting at number 1, which was definitely Kelly Johnson, who just tore up, I mean, not only this tournament, but tore up this game. Just, you know, I think if she's not back there at center handler, like, this offense is not anything near where it ends up being. And I think she's an easy call. Over 400 yards of offense to lead the entire game. So pretty impressive stuff from Johnson.
Yeah, no surprise that we're aligned in this. You know, like you said, this is a great game where goals and assists is just not an effective tool and turns even not the best way to tell the story of who is playing well it was clearly a situation where Vegas had the biggest influence on the outcome of the game of any individual player. I just don't think you could watch the game and come away with a different opinion. So I have Vegas at first. Like, shout out to some of the players we didn't get to mention. Emily Cohen was someone who stood out to me, but also Alex Nelson. Those are two players I think, and Dylan DeClercq. Those are the three players for me that like are honorable mention. That I'm like, okay, I could probably shift things around in the 3 spot, maybe even the 2 spot. But Kelly Johnson clearly had the 1 spot.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Deep Look. Join us in our subscriber bonus segment where we talk about our top 25 players. And next week, we'll go even deeper on nationals. Of course, we've got our awards conversations coming up soon. And we get ready for the college fall preseason as well. I mean, it's already underway, but the big tournaments are coming up in a few weeks. So lots to come here on Deep Look. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.